I mean, if you went to a website and you were presented with a form of like, enter these 6 things before you can proceed, right? You're not,
Right.
you're going to bail. You're never going to, you're going to go
Absolutely.
someplace
That's
else. Yeah.
no thank you. Um, Howdy, everyone. I'm your host, Todd Nienkerk. This episode is part 2 of my conversation with Deanna Ballew, Senior VP of Digital Experience Platforms and AI at Acquia. If you haven't listened to part 1, I highly recommend you do that first. You'll miss a lot of context otherwise. We'll pick up the conversation with a look into our cookieless future. Enjoy. So for people who aren't familiar with the concept of cookieless future and what that means, what does that mean? What is that referring to, and what is taking its place if cookies cease to exist?
Yes. So basically, the cookies that that you're getting automatically, and you're able to harvest that from every website call, those third-party cookies are going away. Google is no longer going to provide them. They are removing them. So that data is going to no longer be accessible. I believe that is looking to be now end of life in 2025. So now we have to figure out, well, if I don't get access to that data, what other data might I get access to so that I can create more personalized, relevant experiences? There is Google Tag Manager that is now available that is, very deliberately saying what sort of data that you're going to be collecting and when. All of these things based on the regulations, you do have to give consent on, even with the cookies you're giving consent on as well. So you need to find a different technique in order to get at your data. So a big piece of the transformation that we have going forward here is with the marketing teams is how do I now create first party data experiences? What is the value exchange that I am going to give so that we can actually get users to provide us more data? Or how do I get data collected in an incremental way? Saying like the first time I'm here, maybe I'm going to ask them a question about their shopping preferences. The next time that they get here, I'm going to ask them another question. And then along the way, I'm, collecting more and more data, which gets into, marketing really needing a data strategy that fits alongside a company's enterprise data strategy. So there's a shift going on, and you'll see this in marketing teams as well as the importance of data and what they're doing, because they can no longer harvest the cookie data for what they need. They're going to have to actually collect and store and then build on their first party data.
And to be clear, the reason why cookies are going away, it probably has a lot to do with legislation and laws that are no longer allowing this kind of thing to happen. And so tech companies, Google in particular, are being forced to no longer allow this kind of technology to persist. And so they're having to come up with alternate ways to continue to do what they do, which is targeted advertising.
Yes. And I mean, the legislation is happening for a reason due to targeted advertising having, a degrading impact on, certain societies and the way that it's been moved forward and probably been handled by bad actors.
Now, this idea of having a data strategy in marketing is really interesting. So whereas before, I suppose the idea was taking for granted, well, there's a lot of stuff that we can harvest already existing in somebody's computer and all the cookies are lying around, and there's a lot of stuff that we can kind of go grab that somebody's probably not aware of, or that they're sort of implicitly allowing us to have, and we're going to use all of that and keep it forever, and use it in the future. But now, obviously, the alternative is not, hey, come to our website. We're going to ask you for all this information the first time you visit. What's your name? What's your email address? What do you like? What do you want to do? Nobody's going to fill that out. Nope. Obviously, that's a horrible experience. It's incredibly invasive. So there has to be some kind of exchange. There has to be a reason why somebody would want to give anybody any kind of information. It's not out of the goodness of their own heart. And you also don't want to ask for too much all at once. So the data strategy then sounds like it has to be a fair exchange of value, first of all, and that it has to be gradual. And that if somebody wants to give you some kind of information, like some kind of a preference, like a shopping preference or something like that, then, well, in exchange for that, you get access to this downloadable article about something. And that has a certain degree of value to that person if they're willing to answer a question or fill out a 2-question survey or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe over time, they start to answer more of these things and they get access to more gated content or more downloadables or things like that. Am I on the right track so far? Is that
Exactly.
plays out?
Yeah, you're
Cool.
on the right track. You obviously, if you went to a website and you were presented with a form of like enter these 6 things before you can proceed, right? You're not.
Right.
You're gonna bail. You're never gonna. You're
Absolutely.
gonna go
That's
someplace else. Yeah.
no thank you. What's the most valuable data that a marketer can have about somebody?
The most valuable data a marketer can have, or the most
Yeah.
valuable data exchange that a marketing team.
Oh, I guess so. The fact that you asked that makes me want to know the answer to both.
Yes.
And what's the distinction between those two?
Well, I would say you think about your own experience as a consumer. The most valuable piece that a marketer has is its brand and its trust in its brand. If you have brand recognition, you can actually demand a higher price point. You could actually, people will stop saying, which one of these am I going to buy? Rather, when you come out with something new, it's just, am I going to buy it and win? Right? It changes the conversation. It's the brand and it's the trust that you as a user give to that brand. And so I would say that the most valuable exchange is anything where you're actually building brand trust. So then when you think about what is the value exchange, so whatever value exchange our marketer can actually provide to build the trust. And I will say that one of the best ways to build any trust is through a community of your peers. So we actually start seeing marketing and communities coming together and working hand in hand. Because if you can actually deliver a value exchange through a community, then when that user is in a community, you're able to get so much more information to that person, and they're giving you a lot more information as well as based on what they're trying to do, what are the pain points, what are they trying to solve. So I see communities as an area of the highest way that marketers can, access not only information about their users, but building that trust. From there, it's about educational content. This is the world of content marketing. If you can help me as a user solve my problem in a way that I can't get otherwise, then that's going to be a value exchange that I would want, or discounting of prices. So if I can be a rewards member and I can get a lower price point, then I'm more likely to come and return to you. Think about, Amazon and Amazon Prime. Like once you get a Prime membership, do you even go anywhere else if you're going to get free shipping through Amazon? No, now you're kind of locked in. Or if you do loyalty programs at your grocery store or on your credit cards, like those are other ways to work with that.
Interesting how Amazon and Amazon Prime has permanently shifted the perception among consumers that shipping ought to be free. Just full stop. And it just feels like the idea of ever paying for shipping at this point is just like, well, how much more do I have to spend to get the free shipping? Because I'll just go ahead and do that. It just feels like this loss.
Yeah.
And it's obviously psychologically it's such a great trick and it makes no actual sense economically, but yet here we are.
Yeah, and that comes down though as a marketing strategy as well, right? So like being able to put that into like, okay, how am I going to get that return customers? So marketing is not just about that first conversion, it's about the return conversion as well. And so sometimes you'll see marketing and account management or customer success managers, they're kind of in their silos. Once you can bring these two together, and it's about those return customers and that return customer experience. So if you can intersect, let's say, all of the data you get from people on your marketing websites and in your marketing areas, and you bring in that intersection of that actual customer data, whether that's in your order inventory, your shipping, what they're buying, what they're looking at, and you bring that data set together. If we get back to that data strategy, all of this is structured data. You can now use technology, use Gen AI and other AI to actually give a more relevant experience back to that user, whether they are logged in and shopping on your site or they're, seeking your websites elsewhere. Because those two data sets can come together.
Fascinating. I don't know if I would have thought to combine those two. And from an agency perspective, the idea of combining the information of marketing and account management is an interesting idea.
Well,
It's
yeah, because marketing is anonymous data, right? You're getting a lot of
yeah.
anonymous data about somebody, and eventually they do become a customer if you convert them.
Hmm.
And now you have customer data coming along with it. But there's still transversing all of your marketing artifacts as well, and sometimes still anonymously, and or
Yeah.
you still have a tracking on them because of they're logged into your other artifacts.
Interesting. I'm gonna have to
That
noodle
is
on that one.
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
called the
Okay.
world of CDP, customer data platforms, and how they can bring together your anonymous marketing data with your actual customer data.
Well, I'll use this as a bit of a contrived segue. Speaking of acronyms, let's go back to CMSs. We touched briefly earlier on how Gen AI and CMSs can integrate, and you gave the example of feeding unstructured design data into a CMS, and you specifically used Drupal as an example. And in this case, feeding Drupal like a Figma file or even something like a physical sketch or a doodle as an image, and using Gen AI to say, give me a Drupal page that looks like this sketch or this Figma file. And Gen AI can not only produce a page that looks like that, but can actually create structured data, the fields and the forms and the content types and all of that stuff. It can create the intent, or understand the intent around that that sketch, that design. What are some other ways that you see AI and CMSs integrating in the future, particularly as it relates to marketing use cases?
Yeah, the other areas, I mean, there's many of them. I would say the other probably most exciting areas are the ones that can transform how marketing is done is the areas of localization and accessibility. So as we think about the volume of content or the amount of different type of content that you need to create and then build on a CMS, a lot of it is to attract a different audience or to get your to get your message out to different regions. And so what we see in the capabilities with Gen AI is now this ability to do all of that translation for you in your own brand voice and tone, and to be able to now localize your websites into many versions, or to have different imagery in all of those versions. So if you think about the ability to create videos is one of the most engaging forms of content right now. They are very time consuming to create and cost a lot of money to localize these. But what you can do with Gen AI now is you can start with a video that maybe you've already crafted, and then you can edit it and augment the different scenes and clips and things like that for those specific localized areas very rapidly, because there's structured data that's sitting behind to say, this is an image that would work in this region, this is an image that works in that region, or these are the product lines that I am selling over here in EMEA, and these are the product lines that I'm selling in LATAM. So like all of that structured data can now be used to localize your content very quickly so that you can reach more audiences. So I feel like this will be a big transformation for marketing teams then to be able to do that and to reach more audiences quickly. But the other audience that you've probably heard me in some of the things I've been talking about is the accessibility side of things. There are so many people that are left out from digital experiences because accessible software is not the first and foremost for many digital experiences. And what that means in marketing world is that they're missing out on all of that market in order to reach them as well. So you can think of things as simple as screen readers. How do screen readers work? How does that experience work? Have you ever turned one on and tried to use it? Like it is.
I have actually. Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to have an alt tag, a descriptive alt tag for every image. It sounds so simple, but it never gets done to the extent that is useful. And you can do that with Gen AI. You can take every single image and give it, a 200 character descriptive alt tag without having to type it yourself. There should be no reason why all of your imagery does not have alt tags and have those on your site. You can also use Gen AI techniques to look at your code and say, okay, how am I going to structure this code to be more accessible? So you have the right labels, you have the right area tags, like you have all of that set up for you, and to either find it or to insert it for you as you look at some of the Copilot tools that are going on, so that you can create more accessible experiences. And then as we start looking at some of the newer vision models and things that we're seeing, especially from OpenAI, like the ability for, anyone who is visually impaired to be able to experience the world with vision now. So being able to see what's going on in front of you, and for descriptive audio to be able to come back to you to say, this is what's going on in front of me. Here is, the lake with the ducks and the 5 people and the kid playing in the corner happening. I can now experience that world very differently with Gen AI. And so I wonder, how might we as marketers, or marketers in this audience, and the technologies that we're able to now use for accessibility, how might we do that to now deliver better, richer experiences for our customers and our users?
Are there any specific initiatives within the Drupal community related to AI that you are excited about or involved in or keeping an eye on that you think are worth calling out? Let me rephrase that. Obviously, there are many that are worth calling out, but any in particular that you are really monitoring that you'd like to highlight?
Yes. So currently working with Jamie from Freely Give on the AI interloper. So it's an abstraction layer that's going to allow any of the Drupal developers to hook into different AI LLM models in the background. So that is a really exciting initiative that we're talking with him about, and how do we abstract out of that so we can easily build on top of it, and then we can build some of those things that I was talking about to simplify that user experience. I think that is probably the area of most excitement for me. Is Drupal is 20 years old, and it has grown very robust, and it can do so many things. It is an engine that Drupal developers love, and it is very complicated for anybody new to try to pick up. And so what we're seeing with some of the initiatives in the Drupal community is the idea of using it to simplify and to lower that learning curve and that barrier of entry for new users. So I'm most excited about how we're going to apply these techniques to bring forward a whole new group of users who can learn to love and utilize and leverage Drupal in the way that all of its large community loves it in today, and not lose the strengths of all of that underlying structure.
Very cool. Thank you so much for your time. If anybody wants to get a hold of you, or they want to learn more about what you're doing, and in particular what you're doing at Acquia, how can they do that? How can they get a hold of you or follow what you're doing?
Yeah, I would say just connect with me on LinkedIn. That is probably the easiest way to find me and where you see most of my activity.